Okay, so on a scale of 1 to 10, how cool was that? And how disappointed are you to just see me sort of sitting here? Well, that's because I have an incredibly good piece of news to show you that the only credibility that I have actually comes from all of the people like you from conferences, 53 cybersecurity conferences in over 3 years. And I want to know rhetorically how many 63-year-old people go to the dry cleaners to pick up a superhero costume. Well, not many. And that's why I have unbelievably great guests, beginning with Peggy Smedley. Hey, Peggy.
Hey, Gary, great to see you.
Yeah, great to see you again. I'm so grateful that you're here. I know you're incredibly busy with your radio show. Tell our audience a little bit about that.
Oh, I love doing my radio show. I've been doing it, I think since 2008. And I think like you, I love talking about technology, interviewing amazing guests, and it's just fun. You get to meet amazing people. Like you have all those badges that you have there and lanyards. I've interviewed a spectrum of people, and the more you interview, the greater knowledge you get. It's just a lot of fun. So I love talking about IoT, sustainability, security, you name it, we talk about it. And it's just fun. Great people. That's what it's all about. Great people.
It really is, and to build on that, one of those of you who don't know my sort of story, I was a victim of a series of cyber crimes. I pivoted to become an advocate, to try to do something, sort of good in the world. And our mission, very similar to yours, Peggy, is to shine the light on the unsung heroes who toiled in anonymity to keep us safe. And that's sort of our mission. So we're totally aligned in that.
Yeah, there's this confluence of forces right now, right? That we all have to come together, and all of us who have this mission to keep educating, from us older generation folks, us baby boomers, to the younger generation who are trying to put all these things together. So I think we're at this precipice right now of bringing all this digital transformation and all these things happening and trying to make it all work. And that's a really cool part of it.
It really is, super cool in that way. And, one of the things that I've learned about the cybersecurity and IT ecosystems is there really is a community with a capital C. People really, try to help each other. You're kind of at the epicenter of that, aren't you?
Well, I like to think I'm at a fun epicenter of it. Sometimes I think when you're at the epicenters, you're not quite sure because everything's disrupting, right? I always say I'm at the disruption. When I used to say that, people hated that world. But I like to, you and I had this conversation, I like to think I'm the light. There's all this darkness in the world. I want to be the light that shows people how to get out of all of this craziness and how to find ways to be more productive. What's the workforce of the future? How do we bring women into more technology? Because we're seeing less women in the workforce. We're seeing younger generations not feeling that they can be compelled and excited about this. And there is manufacturing, there's amazing jobs, construction, all of these innovative things. They're the ones that are going to lead our next generation. So I love to encourage them. Security, where they don't realize you do it every day. I mean, this is what you're doing right now, is we need to protect ourselves. I mean, there's the bad guys. I always say the evildoers out there, they, are sometimes really smart at what they do. And we have to figure out how to keep them at the gate, not breaking through the gate.
Yeah, that's an incredibly appropriate metaphor. And, one of the aspects of cybersecurity is end-of-life devices, which really is the subject of today's very important show, e-waste, recycling, rare earth minerals. I mean, the environment. This is such a complicated topic. And I was really delighted to learn that you've authored a book on the topic, and I'll flash it up on the screen here. So tell us about your book.
I wrote this book. It was kind of interesting. I wrote my first book, Mending Manufacturing, about American manufacturing, and that we have all these products that we have and how we have this supply chain. And then I wrote this book, learning that we think about this make, take, waste society, this linear environment that we're in, and that since the Industrial Revolution, we all want all these products, but where are they going? They're all going to landfills. So we have to learn not to want to destroy everything, that we have to think about what are we doing with it? And that's the thing. We all have all these products and we think about, well, what are we doing? And we have to think we don't need the latest and greatest. What we have to think about is we're destroying Mother Earth. And by destroying Mother Earth, what's happening? And so now we have to think about, take a step back and how do we restore it to our natural ecosystem. And I think by being green again, we can have still the best, but we don't have to have everything all the time, and that's what I think the book's all about.
Speaking of Mother Earth, what a privilege to have Max Justice on the line. Hey, Max, how you doing?
Howdy, all. Doing fantastic. Thanks for asking, Gary. Yourself?
Hi, Max. Nice to meet you.
Peggy, very nice to meet you as well.
So this was not planned. I wish I could say, our team did, but what a great segue. Mother Earth, and then, the farmer. So tell our audience, Max, about all the cool ways that you're distilling complicated, stuff in using farming as an organizing principle.
Sure. So, cyber farming, it's a unique aspect of cybersecurity. And when I talk about cyber farming, it's really about sowing seeds of cybersecurity. We have to sprinkle those seeds, if you will, of knowledge and help people understand why they're doing things, help them become better at their processes, more effective. And security folks for a long time used to say, no, you can't do things. And really, we have to change the mindset of all the security folks and help them understand that they are enablers and they have to help businesses be more effective, be more productive. And they can only do that if they're really involved. And the way that they get involved is by working with people in their organization, because security, it can't be practiced alone. It's not completed alone, and it needs a lot of people to be involved. In fact, everyone in the organization really needs to be involved. And the only way that you can get them involved is by talking to them, helping them get active, perform those tasks like sowing cyber seeds, to have this conversation about e-waste and how we in the IT field have even a bigger problem, and that's dealing with the e-waste and the plastics. And really, that's one of my long-term goals, is to eliminate the need and use of plastics within the IT field and across the world by using mycelium to replace those plastics. But that's for a whole other story in another day.
Indeed. And in order to give our audience a little bit of context, take a look at this quick video. This is from Harvard. I thought that was pretty cool. Wasn't that a good kind of overview from Harvard about the topic?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's exciting to see all of the waste that they're keeping from going back into the earth.
Yeah, and so Peggy, tell us, our audience, a little bit about some of the key takeaways from your book.
I think one of the key things that I want people to understand from the book is that we can do so much more. And I love, Max, that you're talking about that when we talk about the idea of not just, that linear economy that I'm talking about, that we can recycle. When we think about Hewlett Packard or Dell, they're all very big into not wanting to just throw everything that we have from computers. When we even think about batteries, even in our cars, or when we get from the bigger EVs when we start talking about a greener environment, right? And things like that, because that's what we're all thinking about. How do we do these things from a longer lasting, even just from our computer standpoint? We've got to think bigger, right? And in Tesla, everybody's thinking about these things, but we want to think about how do we not just dispose of them, because people think, well, what do I do with my computer when I'm done with it? It no longer has it because we're upgrading all the time. And the interesting thing is, what do we do? And so we think about a lot of these computer companies are thinking about how do they remanufacture them? How do they get the best out of them? And that's what we need to be thinking about. And that's what the book's all about, because we don't think about these things. And you talk beautifully about it, Max, just from think about bottled water. We all think, from tap isn't that good. We've all of a sudden bottled water is the best. How many of those bottles end up in the ocean? And we kill our fish. We kill so much. And again, when we think about it from a security standpoint and we think from a bigger environmental standpoint, we just don't realize what we're doing to the world around us. So that's really what the book's about. But the book's even from a greater perspective, it's 5 generations in the workforce. And we don't realize we all come from everything from a different perspective. An older generation thinks of green completely different when we think about gray to green to blue. And that's what you just talked about. Max, it was beautiful to hear you talk about that, because we all look at this differently from 5 generations. So I'm really glad to have you talk about Cyber Farmer, because you're seeing it from a different perspective, and you just educated me. And that's what we have to do. One educates the next person. And, as we were saying, Gary, I'm dating myself again. It's like the old Clairol commercial, and so on and so on and so on. So we're just going to keep educating, and that's a beautiful thing to do.
Indeed. We have some breaking news here. What do we have here about lots of e-waste and things are not going very well, I guess, in terms of recycling, although it seems like maybe it's a little bit better than it was before, which is a great luck because we're going to be putting out a call for a rapid responder. So anyone out there in our audience who wants to jump in and join the discussion, if you happen to know about the mechanics of e-waste and how to actually do something with e-waste, how do you actually recycle it? That would be great. So just kind of let us know. And hey, wait a minute. What a coincidence. We happen to have a subject matter expert. Wow, what luck that you were just standing by, Paul. Can you believe it?
Yeah, unbelievable. Unbelievable, Gary. How did that happen?
Here's the answer to that question. Like many of you in our audience, Einstein is a hero of mine. But in my case, for a slightly different reason, because as a sort of a North Star and how to, sort of guide my Forrest Gump journey into this digital universe that we're occupying right now, I refer to a quote he gave to a reporter when he said, Mr. Einstein, on one hand, you have science and physics and mathematics and all that. And on the other hand, you have many people who believe in a higher authority or some universal thing or God. How do you reconcile those two views? And Einstein famously said, coincidence is God's way of remaining anonymous. So this could be an Einstein moment that we had, but more than likely our team might have already had this set up in advance. But to that end, this is something that is incredibly interesting. You want to tell us a little bit about what we're reading here, Paul, and tell us a little bit about some of the cool stuff you're doing at your company.
Yeah, so Nate is one of the leading authorities on data destruction, and they did a rather exhaustive survey of used equipment, and I think we would all agree that reuse is better than recycle, even if it's an intermediate step.
Yeah.
And what Nate found in this survey was rather shocking. So they found personal data on 44% of the pieces of equipment that they found, and the types of data were actually also interesting, because you had everything from credit card data to tax information to even information about the companies that the people were working for. And over and above that, 13%, well, only 13% of mobile phones had any data discovered, personal data and the like. 50% of tablets contain that kind of data, and in a close second, 44% of hard drives from laptops, desktops, you name it. So I think it's incumbent upon everyone to understand how critical it is to protect what I call cold data, so data that isn't necessarily linked to directly to a network, but maybe on a spent device or an obsolete device getting ready to be reused or recycled. And complying to standards with that data erasure is also very critical. So I know there are a lot of there's a lot of bad information out in the ecosystem around, how exactly you destroy data and, how exactly the hardware is destroyed as well. So there's, a data security component that folks need to be extremely in touch with, and an environmental component that we do as well.
So let's stay on the security for a moment, since a lot of our audience is from the cybersecurity, and of course IT ecosystem, and maybe you can give our audience a little bit of background about how you go about safely disposing of things. And we'll pop up on the screen here a graphic that describes a little bit, or maybe you can opine on what we're looking at here.
Yeah, so we work directly with our clients. So this is a B2C business, the business of Fourth Bin, and effectively we operate to a number of different certifications that are I like to think they're extremely difficult to get, and they're even more difficult to maintain. So think of eStewards and R2 and the NAID AAA certification. So effectively, those certifications require from the moment that you take possession of somebody's data, right? So this is cold data again. From the moment you take possession of the data till the time it arrives at our facility and is processed by a specific piece of hardware that contains software to ensure that the data is erased completely, to a standard, by the way, that's NIST, if anybody's interested, NIST 800-88. That process is extremely well overseen. So we've got a lot of regulations that we need to follow, including 100% camera access or videoing of all the processing. So.
Do you mean to validate the process?
That it's all been handled correctly and there's no leakage. So one of the statistics on there was that the number of hard drives that we've processed without losing a single bit or byte. So we take great pride in that. In fact, we kind of have a little saying that's a takeoff of the Marines, right? That there's no data left behind. So all the folks at Fourth Bin kind of.
Yeah, I love that. But Paul, I have an idea. Let me do the humor and stuff, and then you focus on the substance. That way we stay in our lanes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah. Guardrails are important. Yeah.
No, that's great. And coincidentally, we have a premiere. This is our first ever unsung cyber hero on the street. Let's take a look. We're going to the return area.
On top of this stuff here, that's all you gotta do.
Okay. So here we go. It's easy peasy to recycle at Best Buy. Ah. Mission accomplished. Here, you probably haven't seen that before.
No, that's a new one. Yeah, that's a new one.
Speaking of new ones, let's add a wonderful rapid responder. Hey, Scott, how you doing?
Hey guys, how you doing there? Great to join.
Yeah, so glad that you're here. Hey, Scott, why don't you share with our audience a little bit about what you know about hardware and destruction? And man, I know you're an expert.
Yeah, I think I always thought about e-waste from the cybersecurity perspective. In other words, there's a trust factor. Do you trust somebody that's going to destroy your hard drive, be it solid state or magnetic, your USB sticks, your old computer, your printers, whatever the case may be? And there was always, from my standpoint, a fear. Can you trust somebody that's going to be destroyed properly? So what do we typically do in the past? we would physically go out in the back with a hammer and smash it up, and you throw in the dumpster. Not a good thing to do from a sustainability standpoint. And of course, our business is really designing test equipment that's used to build out the wireless networks for cell phones. So my focus has always been on cell phones. And I think the important thing is, and Peggy kind of alluded to this before, is learning and communicating the importance of really sustainability and properly disposing of e-waste. So we got educated, we've learned how to properly do it now. And just to share some statistics, and again, because my focus is always on smartphones, there's 130 million cell phones that are just tossed. So basically people take their cell phone and toss them in the garbage. That's scary to me. That is a tremendous amount of waste. And what does that break down to? In the research that I did, it mentions by recycling 1 million cell phones, more than 35,000 pounds of copper, 33 pounds of palladium, 772 pounds of silver, and 75 pounds of gold can be recovered.
Wow.
That's just 1 million phones. Now multiply that if 130 million that are tossed, you're talking about a significant amount of e-waste that is generated each and every year. And that's mostly because people are complacent, lazy, they're too cheap. So by educating and having programs and companies that can effectively recycle things such as an old cell phone, it makes a difference, or reuse them. We also work with companies that actually develop security tools, and they actually will refurbish cell phones and they'll resell it into maybe poorer countries. And that's a positive effect on the global economy and sustainability, which I think is really impressive. But it really takes each and every one of us to take that step and think about the impact and the footprint that we can have on this planet.
So if I might just chime in, if you take what you just said, Scott, and what Paul just said, now go back to my comments again, leading back to Max's. So we're going closed loop here, because Dell actually recycles millions of closed loop plastics to produce new parts of computers and monitors to actually do that. So it's taking a lot of those resins out from 30 to 35%. So you're actually talking exactly about that. So that's why we're improving the environment. We're not fully there yet, but each time they do that, we're not just throwing it and putting it in landfills, we're making it better. And that's what makes it a little bit better each time. And we're finding new uses for it. That's an amazing process.
You know, and Paul, one of the things that I was just kind of curious about, to build on what we just heard from Peggy and Scott, is this whole notion of rare earth, minerals. And from is it true? Is it valid that for example, China has been trying to scoop up all these rare earth minerals and things? And is that valid, first of all?
Well, I've probably read the same reports you have over the years, and they've made significant investments overseas in locations that have been known to be rich in rare earth metals. There was a point in time, I believe, where there was an economic equation and an argument that could be made to extract rare earth metals from things like computers and cell phones. I think the folks that design modern day electronics, state-of-the-art stuff we use today, have gotten pretty good at removing as much of that as they can. It's still in there, so there's still something to be extracted. What's really kind of put a halt on that is the fact that you can't export. There's a global restriction on export of electronics, and frankly, that was put into place mainly for sustainability and environmental reasons, because we didn't want anyone that signed the pact did not want spent electronics, obsolete electronics showing up in their countries.
Yeah, indeed. And so, Max, let me just ask you something for a moment, and also Peggy, if you can opine on this. The notion of communicating effectively and motivating our audience, and just large enterprises, SMBs, everyone with a device. How do we convince them that this is a good idea?
Well, so there's a couple of ways that we can do that. The first one is they can look to Peggy's book, The Sustainable and Circular World. Get that out there for people to read and start understanding that this is a really massive problem. And second, really, I got to point them towards Scott's book, Cybersecurity in Everybody's Business. Uh, this is really a thing that everybody needs to be involved in. It's everybody's duty to be a steward of this earth and of this world. And that's just like security, everybody has to play a role. So everybody needs to be involved in figuring out ways that they can reduce their need for plastic and figure out ways of properly recycling their phone. Scott talked about it earlier with the refurbished cells. Understanding where the assets, the technology that you're buying, where it goes after the fact. That's the one big piece about technology. Everybody really truly forgets about that fourth bin. And so that's one reason why I'm excited to talk to Paul about that fourth bin and knowing how to properly reduce, reuse, and eliminate.
Wow, that's cool. And Scott, you want to tell the audience a little bit about what you just referred to about cybersecurity is everybody's business?
Yeah, sure. I went to the point where a number of years ago, dealing with security and educating people, where I was targeted and attacked with multiple cyber breaches to the point where they took $65,000 out of our checking account. And back then in the days, and we're talking the days of Target, when we first all heard about Target breach and so on and so forth, a lot of people didn't get cybersecurity. But I think now it's been in the headlines so much, and it's affected each and every one of us. I decided to author a book, Cybersecurity is Everybody's Business, to hopefully help, especially business owners, appreciate they need to protect the assets in their business, personal information, their clients' information. And that all goes down even to this conversation, information that's inside of our printers, our fax machines, our scanners, our hard drives, USB sticks, our cell phones. All of these things hold our data. And it's really important that we understand that we protect it, number one. But now I think that the other side of the conversation we don't want to neglect is that we properly recycle it and reclaim these things, these precious minerals and things that are in it. And we can prevent the manufacturing process to develop something new if we reuse it properly. I had a conversation with a friend the other day. He wanted to go buy a brand new computer. And I encouraged him. I said, why don't you look at one that's a little bit older that's a rebuild? Somebody brought it back. It had a problem. It was rebuilt, but it's still certified. He looked at me because you can do that. I said, yeah, absolutely. He saved a boatload of money. He showed it to me the other day. It looks beautiful. Minor scuffs on it, this and that, but it met his budget. And he didn't have to go out and buy a brand new computer. And I'm not saying it's wrong to buy a brand new computer, but where you can reuse something, where you could use something that's recycled, you're really contributing in a positive sense toward this planet. One thing I came across just a little bit of research when I was looking at some of this, and it helped put it in perspective for me. Just to produce a computer with a screen takes 1.5 tons of water, 48 pounds of different chemicals, and 530 pounds of fossil fuel is wasted just for creating or designing and building one computer. Now take that across on a bigger scale. That blew my mind. And I'm saying, geez, do I have to always go out and get the latest and greatest? Sometimes we could back up and buy something that's using more, I think to the point of Paul mentioned, where there's more recycled plastic in it or other things like that. Some of these precious metals are recouped and again, reused in something that's built. All of those things have a dramatic impact and something that we should bring up as part of our conversation.
Yeah, indeed. And Paul, just to kind of build on that for a moment, tell us a little bit more about the volume of e-waste that you handle in a typical year.
Well, we do about 1 million pounds a year of volume, but keep in mind there's anywhere from 50 to 100 tons generated globally. And there's estimates that 60 to 90% of of that number does not get recycled and frankly just goes into landfills. So
Wow.
we've got a long way to go. I think to your question earlier about what stimulates the thought and action to recycle and the thought and action to treat your data in a different way on an obsolete device. I mean, for us, the precipitating event that created the company, frankly, was the New York State laws on electronics going into landfills. And so obviously, New York City, as you can imagine, is home to a lot of electronics. So there you have fourth bin, right place, right time. But keep in mind, only 25 states in the District of Columbia in this country have landfill laws around electronics.
Wow.
So, even here, we've got a long way to go. Forget about the rest of the world for a second. So I think, nobody likes the R word, right? Regulation, but I think regulation will get the folks who aren't, zealots about this or just don't have, kind of the DNA makeup to, want to recycle and reuse things or, investigate where their materials are coming from. I think that will stimulate action. And on the data front, for me, the issue there is around, how many times will companies face the consequences of, not spending an extra, $10,000 or $20,000 a year to protect themselves from data breaches. So, Morgan Stanley's a perfect example. So they faced a $60 million fine for, a relatively, significant data breach, and all the surrounding action that didn't happen to make sure that breach was never felt. So, I think, when you're contemplating, who you're going to hand your cold data to, I think there's just a few simple questions you can ask. But I think from a financial standpoint, because I still run into folks who will say, but somebody will come get this and they'll pay me $100, and you're running a corporation.
Right.
I don't get how that decision gets made, but I think the awareness around what the consequences are, frankly, aren't widespread enough. So, I'm interested to see how the ESG folks like Sustainalytics and ISS and these types of organizations that oversee corporate ESG behavior, mostly from a public corporation standpoint. And I'm also interested to see how insurance companies who insure corporations treat cold data, and in addition to how they today look at hot data, right? Your live networks. So
I mean, I went to, just to build on that for a moment, one of the conferences I went to was an industry conference on e-waste and recycling. It was held in Orlando. I can't recall the exact name right now. But one of the things that kind of struck me is, it's a pretty big ecosystem. There are quite a few players who offer different sorts of solutions along this kind of daisy chain of recycling. Can you help us understand this industry, and kind of how does it work?
Well, from a B2B perspective, you have folks that will go out and collect hardware that contains software, and they'll get hardware that doesn't contain data, just like printers and fax machines, although some printers might have data. So and fax machines as well, actually, now that I think about it. But a lot of things that have a power cord to it, not necessarily just
right,
just a circuit board with and data containing devices. Those devices are collected, and again, depending on what level of certification you have and how seriously you take that activity, you are going to process the data in a certain way, or maybe not process it. And then from that point forward, there's really only two streams. One is a scrap stream, where all the material will be effectively put through a process where the metals, the plastics, and the glasses are separated,
right,
to the degree they can be, and then put back into, as Peggy mentioned earlier, put back into a productive raw material stream. There are devices that still have life left in them, And when there's life left and the machines are certified as clean from a data erasure standpoint, they'll go back into the merchandising stream, which people can pick up a used computer at a lot of different folks online. So those are fundamentally the two streams. One is a resale reuse. One is a scrap back into the productive work stream.
Yeah, thanks a lot for that. It's really interesting. Peggy, what originally motivated you to write your book?
I think as we originally talked about, it just was looking at what was happening right now in the marketplace. We were coming to this point where we had more of the younger workforce not being able to find the types of jobs that they wanted. There was this disconnect in the marketplace. And I started to see that, we were doing things to our own environment, destroying our ecosystem that I don't think we even understood what we were doing. And I think as all of your guests are talking about is, again, we needed to really kind of come together and understand what was happening. I don't think we understood what happened to Easter Island. I don't think we understood kind of when we talk about the Paris Agreement, why some people are more polluters than others. And, you can say you want to be a better, climate citizen, but it doesn't work unless everybody's in it together. And what that means, to try to get to that 1.5 degrees Celsius, what does that mean? By the end of, our emissions, by the end of the decade, it doesn't work unless everybody's committed to it. So I wanted a book that said, okay, let's talk about what it really means, because we talk about these terms that nobody understands, and they just mean like a bunch of another like alphabet soup. It's just a lot of acronyms nobody gets and nobody wants to get, and we're all coming at it from different perspectives. And I said, let's take a step back, let's take a deep breath, and let's interview all these really smart people, and let's try to make it so it's not this 300,000 air perspective, and bring it all down. And let's put it in layman's terms so we all understand what it means. What are we all supposed to do by 2030, by 2050? What are we saying the Paris Agreement means? And that's really what I was trying to get to.
Yeah, very, very well said. That's incredibly insightful. How do people get a copy of your book, Peggy?
You can go up on Amazon.com and you can get it there, or you can get it on our website at Sustainable Circular World. So that's where you can get it.
All right, cool. Max, welcome back. You lost the sound for a minute, but we're glad, that you're here again. What's next for you in your mission to enlightening people, about sustainability and its impact on the planet?
Sorry about that. My machine muted out on me. Would you mind repeating that question? Apologies.
Yeah, I was asking you about what is the meaning of life. just kidding. I was asking you, like, what is next for you, in your role as the farmer? How do you, what stage are we in sort of growth pertaining to recycling? Are we seedlings? Are we sprouted a little bit? Let's stay with that metaphor.
So, yeah, thanks. I definitely appreciate it. I like simple metaphors. The KISS method always works in farming. So thank you. What's next? Boy, there are so many different things. We are really at this moment of time where we have a lot of people, and Peggy said it, we have a lot of innovation going on right now. People are bringing new ideas to the market. We even had, we as cyber experts have to be worried about e-waste, not just on this planet. I happen to work with an organization that I'm talking to them about their waste out in space as well. Let
me ask you something. Forgive the interruption. I happened to just come across a story about an e-recycler in space, where this kind of the satellite, as it were, is going to have some kind of magnetic or other way to kind of capture space junk.
Yeah, just about every way imaginable, from actually somebody having like a fishing net and having that run between a couple of satellites. They've talked about figuring out ways to take some of that debris and send it out into space or bring it closer into orbit for it to burn off. But I actually really like the way that the Japanese are looking at our e-waste out in space. And they're actually putting a satellite in space based upon it's made out of wood. Well, I want to do the same thing, but I want to put a satellite up in space made out of mycelium, which is the foundational substance that grows mushrooms. That's just one of many ways that we can be innovative in solving our problems with plastics and e-waste. So
Yeah, but hold on a minute. I just forgive my ignorance here. Mushrooms?
oh, absolutely.
So, like,
We're
what is
talking-
that? What is that? Just give us the short.
Sure. So mycelium is that the white composite that is all over the earth. In fact, it's if you were ever to go to a graveyard, you're going to see it all over the place. About 3 inches down or so, there is a white band of substance. It's mycelium, and it goes all over the world.
Oh my God.
And it's how the earth communicates. There's actually talking between that and the trees.
All right. If I had a sound effect, I would use it right now because that's my head exploding. What?
And there's a lot of people doing it. I actually have a mentor, Gavin McIntyre. He is the chief scientist for EcoVativeDesign.com. They are reducing plastics by taking mycelium and turning it into chairs. They're turning it into packing material. They're turning it into many things. I want to work with them and make the next satellite in space.
Wow, that's for another show, but stay tuned. That sounds incredibly interesting and possible. You know, I mean, that's what's beautiful about human beings. We can imagine things that don't exist, and then we have the ability to actually create them. On that kind of, upbeat, positive note, Paul, let me just begin with you. Any final thoughts? How do people learn more about your company, that kind of thing?
Well, I guess the easy way is to go to fourthbin.com. A lot of what we've discussed today, you'll find there, at least some of the facts I've shared with you. We've got some good case studies on companies that have suffered some relatively substantial reputational and financial consequences from making poor choices around how to treat data and their devices. At the end of the day, I think when you're thinking through this, if you're in a position to make that decision or influence that decision, for me, it comes down to just a couple things, and you'll find this on the site as well. I mean, it's how is the vendor that you're choosing going to treat your data, and how are they going to treat the material that they collect? Are essentially how ethical and responsible are they? So there's a set of questions, basic diligence that you can do around that, but it really revolves around the certifications that they hold, because the certifications will guarantee that they're doing this the right way, and you can ask some simple questions about where the recycling is done, and to see the certificates in living color. But you just like 15 years ago, and maybe today we don't do it as much. Before you put your credit card information into a web portal, you look to see that the VeriSign was there. It's kind of the same thing, right? You want
a Better Business Bureau or like Good Housekeeping seal of
right.
recycling.
Yeah. So Scott mentioned it earlier. I mean, you have to develop a level of trust with your clients, and that trust has to be built, I think, on those key things. So, just a few simple questions, but again, it's all on the dimension of data and on the dimension of the environment. And I think the level of certification is important. And by the way, when you go to websites, because there are hundreds of folks out there that pose as environmentally responsible recyclers, and they'll put the logo of the state that they're in. I've seen it a couple times in their website in different places. I don't know what that means or who buys into that, but you just have to be careful because, again, if you look at the Morgan Stanley case, was the $60 million fine really worth not paying
Right.
$20,000 or $50,000 a year even to have your material in your data treated correctly?
Makes sense. Yeah, great. Thank you. Scott, what final thoughts do you have? How do folks get in touch with you and learn more about all the stuff you're doing?
Yeah, well, certainly final thoughts. One thing that really stands out from this great conversation and awesome guests on here, and honored to be on here with you, Gary. I appreciate you hosting this platform. I was thinking about a couple of years ago, I was struggling to do some recycling and get rid of stuff as we were cleaning out our building here, things that have built up over the years. I went to the first recycler that I came across that came and gave me an estimate. It was somewhere in the neighborhood of about $7,000 for them to take these things away. And I was surprised because it wasn't that much. Afterward, I educated myself, and maybe to Paul's point, you have to learn to who's reputable and what they're going to do with it. And as you do that, you realize it's not as expensive as some people charge. And they can properly remove the data, and you have a comfortability on the cybersecurity side. You know that you're recycling it properly and contributing toward the planet. And I think it's important that going forward, if there are more programs to maybe incentivize people, and I was thinking about this from the cybersecurity world, with bug bounties, people are paid when they find bugs, right? That's important. That works. It's proven. In the world of cryptocurrency, miners solving algorithms are paid with Bitcoin. When we go to ShopRite and they want us to return our shopping cart, you get your quarter back when you plug the little thing in. So people tend to be creatures of habit, but they'll migrate toward things that will reward them. And it doesn't mean you have to be paid a lot of money, but a little incentive makes you think about the environment more because it affects your pocket. When you assign $1 to something or give back somebody a little something, they're more inclined to do it. So hopefully going forward, more and more programs will be incentives for people to consider recycling their phones, their computers, their technology within a company, old batteries, instead of having to be ripped off or pay too much by bogus businesses and things like that. And certainly from the cybersecurity front, if people want to learn more about myself, they can go to scottschober.com or my company's website, where we provide wireless threat detection tools for cybersecurity agencies, is BV Systems, Bravo Victor, and then systems spelled out. And thanks again, everyone.
No, well, thank you, and on behalf of a grateful digital universe, thanks to all of you for being real life unsung cyber heroes. This is an incredibly important topic that I think warrants a little mini series. So we'll put together a few more sessions like this because it's incredibly important for the future of the planet. So again, on behalf of a grateful nation, thank you so much. Recently, someone asked me who our audience is. Actually, it was this morning is what it was. And so I just want to pop this up here so you can get a flavor of the kinds of folks that I've been privileged to sync up with on LinkedIn. It all started when about 4 years ago, I wanted to listen and learn from smart people. So I invited only CSOs to connect with me and to send real life blinded stories of cybercrime, answering the question, what happened? What were the consequences? What were the lessons learned? And then I ran out of them, and then I did CISOs and then CTOs. So now we have 22,840 connections on this crazy platform on LinkedIn, and we're distributing it in different ways. I wanted to show, this is a semi-world premiere real quickly. This is a draft of our new website. We're thinking of calling what we're doing here a network rather than just a show, because it turns out that a lot of my guests connect with each other. There's a lot of business that gets done. Like when smart people get together, good things happen. So once again, on behalf of a grateful digital universe, thank you for being who you are, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thanks all.